Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So, as I tweeted yesterday, Tuesday is one of my favourite days of the week because get to look at the handicap marks, get to see who's dropped in the handicap, who was interesting, and I think there are 6 this week that caught my eye, and we're going to go through them. But we're also going to talk about a horse that didn't drop in the handicap but was given a handicap mark that I think is very lenient. And I'm hoping that they've got a long-term plan with the horse. So let's get on with it. The first horse I want to talk about is a horse called Cateson. Now, Cateson was tipped up by a few people and finished third at Aintree, having won this race last year. Now, why I quite like this race in general is, let's have a look. We can see that Top Rated won the race and RTR2 was second. Now, I always think that means, in my opinion, the right horses have been at the front. So you look at those just behind. Very similar to how if I pick a horse that I think is well handicapped and it goes and wins, I then look behind it. Similar to like Guard Your Dreams. As we know, we had Art Approval and Captain Morgs come from that race. So I want to look at the horses behind the front two here, Tamar Bridge and Pounding Poet. They were obviously unexposed horses, and were still going up the handicap. Now, Cateson finished third, having won this race last year, so I think the form was strong anyway. And I just think dropping a pound to 133 was quite lenient. I think the horses in front are obviously improving, so, Cateson has probably run to his mark. Now, dropping a pound is nice. Especially when, if we look back here, this is the race that I think? No, this is the race that I think they'll go to next. He finished third in January of this year in a 2 mile 3 handicap at Ascot, which is the Holloway's handicap. Good prize money. And finished third behind Craig Niche and Arriva Dirty. Now, Arriva Dirty had been backed multiple times for good races. And Craig Niche obviously went on to, I think he went off favourite for the Coral Cup after this. This was a good run. Back in fourth was Dons Levant, who's since won the Stayers Handicap Hurdle at Haydock. It was a good run from Cateson. Now, that came off a mark of 139. 2 disappointing runs, you could say. Well, one maybe at Ascot back in February. Then finished 5th in a good race at Aintree, and has since finished 3rd in a good race at Aintree. There's nothing wrong with that form, and yet, for one bad run, really, he's been dropped £6, which I think is very lenient. Excuse my phone, let me just mute that so that we don't get messages. Or we do, but we don't get any noises. There we go. So for one bad run, really, Cateson's been dropped £6, and I think that's very eye-catching, and I certainly hope Cateson is aimed at that race at Ascot in January, where I think if it turns up off 133 and runs a similar race to last year, he's going to go very, very close to winning that. Moving on to the next horse, and it's our friend Balandi. Balandi dropped another £3 to 137 for that. And I thought, as I mentioned in the previous video, the trip plus the going just found him out a little bit. And yet, he's come out of the same race as Cateson. Cateson was probably aimed at that race, having won it last year. The front two were top rated and second rated on the ratings. And Elvis Mail had been running in some graded races. So it probably wasn't a bad run. Running off 137, I've had a look at some of the previous efforts from Balandi. Now, obviously, we know he's got some really good form, but he was third on Better Going in a Coral Cup off an £11 higher mark. Could be where they go. He finished third at Ascot in February off 148. He has won a Bet for Hurdle of 135, but he's still £2 higher. He's older and he's £2 higher still. So that wouldn't be where I would send Balandi next. There is also a race in late January that he's won off 142 at Uttoxeter, and it's this race back here. He won this over 2 mile 3 on soft going, which is probably far enough on soft going. And he won it off 142. He's now obviously £5 lower. And if he runs there, in late January, I'd be very, very keen on him. He could also run at Ascot in February, but I think they'll turn up at Uttoxeter next. If he disappoints, then the silver plate at Kempton could be where he ultimately ends up instead of the Cheltenham Festival. But I think he'll run well at Uttoxeter. It's not quite as far at Aintree. I don't think it will be as soft going. And I just think all of that will suit him nicely. And I didn't think it was a bad run finishing 5th. So to drop another £3, he's going to go very, very close soon. He got close enough then to suggest that he isn't completely gone at the game. So I want to give Balandi another chance, hopefully at Uttoxeter. The next horse I want to talk about is Lord Dominill. Lord Dominill pulled up in the Beecher Chase, which was disappointing. He probably got his going of soft going, but he hadn't run since April, so he may have needed the run. Now, for me, pulling up would be a concern if they were to think about returning to Aintree for the Grand National. Also, it's unlikely to be soft heavy going at Aintree in April, so he's not going to get his preferred going. So I'm hoping that they scrap that plan and try and win something else. And the obvious race is back at Haydock in February for the Grand National Trial. It's likely to be soft because it's Haydock, and he won it off 150. He's dropped now back to, he won it off 149, sorry. He's back to 150. Let's start that again. He's back down to 150, and he won it off 149. He's a pound higher than when winning the race. It's a good prize. Last year it was 42,000 for the winner. They're nothing to be, they can't ignore that, and I think that's where he ends up next. Then they could look at returning for the Grand National if they want. They could say that last year he had too many runs. He ran in November, December, January, and February before running at Aintree. If they gave him the 2 runs, it might be better for him going next to Haydock, win that, and then see what they get for the Grand National. But obviously he would have already had his mark by then. So yeah, that's where I would be aiming Lord Dominill, back at Haydock, on heavy going. That's the only place I really want to see him, though. Anywhere on soft heavy going would be fine, but if it's quicker than that, I'd be concerned. And I just think that's worth targeting with how old is he? He's quite old, isn't he? No, he's only 8. So yeah, go back to Haydock and win that race. The next horse I want to talk about is a horse called Benson. Obviously, as you know, Benson is in my horses to follow, and he's not disappointed. He's been frustrating in his first 2 runs. When he was 5th at Cheltenham over 2.5, he travelled well for a long way, but definitely wants softer going. Didn't get that, and maybe needed the run. They dropped him back in trip, probably hoping for soft heavy going again like he got last year. He ran okay at Sandown. If you actually watch it again, he finished 4th, but that was the closest he ever got, and it was always being pushed along. If it had been soft or heavy, I think he would have got closer, but it wasn't. So I just felt that it all happened a bit quick for Benson. He dropped £2 to 133, which means I think he's dropped now £6 in his last 2 runs. That's too much. He's going to go in very soon. The 2 races that I have highlighted potentially for him, I mentioned the Lanzarote over 2.5 at Kempton, but also the Holloway Handicap over 2.3 at Ascot. As we know, he ran well over 2 mile at Ascot when he was behind Buzz. That was a good race. And again, even at Ascot, he demonstrated that he wanted to step up in trip, even on the heavy going. I think step him up to 2.3, I think the Holloway Handicap Hurdle is. That extra trip, if it's soft or heavy, I think he goes very, very close in that, off his 133 mark. Moving on, we got Champagne Well. He dropped another £3 to 129. Now, I've suggested that I'd like to see him back over hurdles, and I do. I think he can go very close off 137 even over hurdles. But if they wanted to keep him over fences, I would certainly lower his aim next time. Try and get him to win a race over fences. find an easier race. And there is actually a 0 to 130 at Sandown in January. It's on the 8th of January. It will be against easier opposition. Even if he makes those mistakes, I think he'll be good enough to win that race off 129. And then if he does win that, then they can look at something a bit better over fences. But get him that experience and get him that winner on the board over fences before actually running in a decent handicap chase again, or revert him to hurdles and see what they can pick up off 137, which I think they can find a race for him off 137. He is not. I think he's much better than that, even over hurdles. The fences have just seemed to mess him about a bit, but he could certainly win a 0 to 130. The next horse I want to talk about is Burrows Edge. Burrows Edge dropped £4 to 128. And interestingly, if you look at his form, Good to Soft he won. Good to Soft he was third. He was second on Good. He's won a couple of races on Soft, but they were, you can see he went off 8 to 1 on in one race. They were races he was expected to win. He's not as good on softer conditions, and he hadn't run since March 2020 when finishing 4 for 4 over fences at Haydock. Now, they could drop him back to hurdles and go back for the Lanzarote hurdle. I'd be very interested to see what handicap mark he got back over hurdles. He won the Lanzarote hurdle 3 runs ago off our mark of 132. Now, his chase mark is now 128. And I'd be interested to see if the handicapper gave him the same mark over hurdles, suggesting that he's lost a bit of visibility because he had nearly, not far off. Is that 2 years off the track? Yeah, nearly 2 years off the track. So that's certainly an option for him, is dropping back over hurdles for the Lanzarote and see what handicap mark he gets. Or they could go to Kempton on Boxing Day. There's a 2.5 mile novice handicap chase for horses rated 0 to 140. We know he likes Kempton. He's got some really good form there. Second, third in a Lanzarote. Won a Lanzarote. Sorry, he was second in the Lanzarote. He was fourth in a hurdle race on hurdles debut. He's got some really good form at Kempton. So that would be an obvious one for Burrows Edge if they stick to fences. So whatever, I think they'll go to Kempton next, whether it's for the Lanzarote hurdle over hurdles, or whether it's for the handicap chase on Boxing Day for horses rated 0 to 140. The final horse I want to talk about is a horse called Nurse Susan. Now, Nurse Susan didn't get a handicap drop or anything. We've just found out her mark. She's been given a mark of 123. Now, I've had a look at the Imperial Cup because Dan Skelton and the owners obviously won this race last year, the Imperial Cup last year with Langadan, before running him in the Martin Pipe, where he finished second. Obviously, they were trying to win the Cheltenham Festival bonus for winning the Imperial Cup as well. And I think this is the perfect horse to try and do it with, Nurse Susan. Rated 123 is a bit dodgy. A few years ago, sorry, my light's just gone off because my screen went off. Last year, Nurse Susan would have got in carrying 10 stone 3 in the Imperial Cup. But a couple of years before that, she would have been £11 out of the handicap, £4 out of the handicap, and £11 out of the handicap. Now, that would be a concern. So I wonder whether they try and find another race first, potentially win that to make sure and guarantee themselves a run in the Imperial Cup. And then I think it would be between the County Hurdle and the Martin Pipe as the next race. I know we're looking 2-3 races in advance, but I do think trainers and owners do that and need to be doing that if they've got a horse that they think is very well handicapped, for example. And I think the 123 for Nurse Susan is not. I was expecting more mid-130s. Personally, the County Hurdle lowest rated mark for the last 5 years has been 129, 133, 123, 113, 134. So you can see she does need to go up a little bit to probably get into those. Obviously, if she wins the Imperial Cup, she would carry a penalty, and that would probably be good enough to run in the County Hurdle and not be too far out the handicap. Whereas the Martin Pipe, they're actually a little bit higher. 132, 136, 126, 136, 135. So that might be a little bit harder to get into. I think the Imperial Cup and the County Hurdle is a brilliant plan if they can find one more race for Nurse Susan to win. There is a novice event at Newbury in February that they could aim at, but I'm really keen to see Nurse Susan make use and take advantage of this low 123 handicap mark. So there's a few horses to think about going forward. Cateson, I want to see Cateson in the Holloway Handicap Hurdle at Ascot. Finished third last year, £6 lower this year. Balandi drops another £3 down to 137. There's a race at Uttoxeter. There's also a race at Ascot, but I hope they go to Uttoxeter first. Lord Dominill is now only £1 higher than when winning the Grand National Trial at Haydock in February. Surely that's a target. It's worth 40 plus thousand to the winner. Benson dropped another £2 to 133. Step up in trip is surely going to happen now. There's the Holloway Handicap Hurdle or the Lanzarote Hurdle. Champagne, well, I hope they drop him back over hurdles, but if they stick to fences, taking the easier option at Sandown, there's a 0 to 130 on Boxing Day. 0 to 130, I think it's on Boxing Day, it might be on the 26th. Burrows Edge, there is a race on Boxing Day if they stick over fences, a 0 to 140 handicap. We know he likes Kempton, or they could drop back to hurdles after finishing 4 for 4 on Chase debut. Back to hurdles for the... wasn't Chase debut, fell on Chase debut at Ludlow. Back to hurdles for the Lanzarote Hurdle, potentially. And Nurse Susan, I'm hoping they can get that horse another win to move up the handicap slightly to get into the Imperial Cup and then hopefully a Cheltenham Festival race. So there's my thoughts. Thanks for listening. And hopefully I've highlighted a few more subsequent winners or future winners. Thank you.